Hello everyone, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this video, we will see about the pharma industry and how the Atmanirbhar Bharat in pharma, which is also called as PLI scheme, that is production linked incentive scheme, has affected pharma industry in India. Let's see the context. Okay, the PLI scheme for API and DI was introduced. What is API? Active pharmaceutical ingredients. Active pharmaceutical ingredients, and also DI, which is an important part of pharma, was introduced by the government during the COVID-19 period. Okay, why was it introduced? Why was it introduced? It was introduced because the economic slowdown or the recession that was caused during the lockdown has to be revived, and the production has to be given a push so that the economy gets a push. That is the reason why government came up with a production linked incentive scheme which incentivized the production. If the industry enhances its capacity and increases the production, government would incentivize that particular industry. That was the reason behind introducing a scheme called PLI scheme during the post COVID-19 period. With respect to this PLI scheme, there were 239 applications were received and 61 were selected. Okay, what does the PLI scheme and also the Self Reliant scheme does is, government aims to have self reliant pharma industry, which means it wants import reduction and substitution, which means any commodity that was imported before has to be produced in India. Which means when it comes to the pharma industry, if for example a Dolo 650 tablet is being imported from a different country, government incentivizes its production in India. That is the main aim of PLI scheme. Okay, I think you have understood this. In order to have domestic production, 239 applications were received and 61 industries were finalized. Okay, and out of these 61, 11 companies withdrew and only 50 were finalized against 136 beneficiaries that were required. See here, the required beneficiary number was 136. Government had finances and also had administrative setup in order to include 136 industries for production linked incentive scheme in pharma sector. Okay, but reality, what happened, only 50 industries were finalized as the final beneficiaries. Okay, I hope you are understanding the dichotomy here. Government is ready to provide incentives, but the investment is not flowing in pharma industry. Pharma industry after COVID-19 is said to be a sunrise industry because it is booming. Pharma industry is making profits. In spite of such a boom, investors are not ready to invest in India in pharma industry because we have got only 50 final lists. So why did this happen, and why did the production linked incentive scheme in pharma fail? This is what we will be discussing in the video. Please subscribe if you are not subscribed to Legacy IAS Academy. See, this is active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is also called as API, which forms the core component of any medicine. Let's see the state of pharma sector in India. India is called the pharmacy of the world. Okay, India is called the pharmacy of the world because India meets 50% of global demand for vaccines, and also it is the largest producer. Around 40% of the generic medicines are produced in India. Okay, this is the reason why India is called the pharmacy of the world. You can recall here India supplied hydroxychloroquine, which was a very crucial medicine to USA, Europe and many other African countries during COVID-19 period as a matter of soft diplomacy and also humanity Okay, India supplied hydroxychloroquine. You would have seen this in news. And many vaccinations, 50% of global vaccinations are produced in India. This is the reason why India is called the pharmacy of the world. And also 80% of retroviral drugs for AIDS, in order to combat acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, in order to combat AIDS, are supplied by Indian pharmaceutical firms. And the state of pharma industry, when it comes to your mains examination, questions can be asked in GS1. There is a topic called location of industries. Under this heading, the state of pharma industry in India and also the factors responsible for its location can be asked. So, in this context, I will advise you to have a brief idea about locational factors that have favored the location of pharma industries in India. Now, let us see what is the PLI scheme. What is the PLI scheme? That is production linked incentive scheme. Why was it introduced? We have seen this. It was introduced post COVID-19 in order to give a push to supply chain and bridge the demand supply mismatch. In order to bridge the demand supply mismatch, here you can see the demand supply mismatch is a part of GS3 economics, and how governance, which is a part of GS2, can be linked to GS3 in order to solve practical problems. This particular scheme can also be asked in GS2. In GS2, in governance, we have a topic called government policies and its implications. Under this particular subheading, questions on the effectiveness of PLI scheme can also be asked. Now, we have seen why was it introduced during the COVID-19 in order to achieve self-reliant pharma sector, which is popularly called by the Honorable Prime Minister as Atmanirbhar Bharat. We have also made a video on Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense technology. If you have not watched that video, I advise you to watch that video as well. So, self-reliant technology, self-reliant India, which is also called as Atmanirbhar Bharat. What are the provisions? Okay, we have seen the provisions of PLI scheme. That is, if a government is planning to achieve import substitution, then the government will provide incentives for industries so that that particular commodity is manufactured in the Indian borders itself, so that the import bill would be reduced. That is the provision of PLI scheme. PLI scheme also incentivizes domestic production through foreign investment. You can see that the FDI limits will be reduced for the sectors for which PLI scheme has been rolled out. So, foreign investment in order to achieve domestic production. Now, let us see, in spite of all these very good provisions, what led to the failure of PLI scheme? This particular aspect is widely discussed in today's newspaper. The entire article is based on the same, the reasons why it failed. The first reason, cost of imports. It is said that in order to achieve self-reliant and to combat the Chinese imports, which are 30 to 35% cheaper than the domestic production, led to the downfall of PLI scheme. I will repeat, the Chinese imports are 30 to 35% cheaper than the domestically produced drugs. Because of this, we had very less domestic investment when it comes to the PLI scheme. Second one is the technology. For example, China has cutting edge technology when it comes to the manufacturing of drugs, because of which it can manufacture drugs in a lesser time and also lesser cost. Cost and time would be lesser, because of which the drugs manufactured in Russia becomes more competent when it compared to those manufactured in India. And the next one is greenfield industry. There are two types of investment that we can see, greenfield and brownfield. Okay, brownfield. What did the PLI scheme do is, PLI scheme gave more importance to setting up of new industries and not renovating or upgrading the already existing industries. See, since independence, India is manufacturing drugs, so India had the capacity, but it was not upgraded, it was not updated based on the cutting edge technology. Instead of expressing its favor towards setting up new greenfield enterprises, government should have gone for upgrading the already existing brownfield industries. Okay, but the government emphasized more on greenfield, and that is the reason why the investments are less when it comes to pharma sector in India. Lack of importance to MSMEs. Around 85% of the goods are manufactured, drugs are manufactured by MSMEs, but the PLI scheme gives more importance to large industries, because of which the large industries showed low attention towards investments in pharma sector. And the next one is PLI and large firms. We have seen here, because of the 85% of drugs are manufactured in MSMEs, and the API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, are basically manufactured by MSMEs, but the importance was given to larger firms which showed least attention in investments. And the next one and the last one is PSUs. Public sector enterprises or public sector units were not involved when PLI scheme was drafted. PLI scheme concentrated more on private and that too large industries and not MSMEs and also not public sector units. All these 6 factors led to the failure of PLI scheme. If a question is asked on the impact of government policies, these are the points that you are supposed to write in this particular question. As usual, we will see a question now. India needs to reorient its industrial policy with respect to PLI scheme. Okay, here you need to link the industrial policy that India has to follow with respect to PLI scheme. For example, including public sector units, MSMEs, and also working on cost and technology. So, in order to do all this, government has to reorient its industrial policy with respect to PLI scheme so that India becomes self-reliant, which is also popularly called as Atmanirbhar when it comes to the pharma sector, and we can popularly tell that India is the pharma of the world. Thank you. For more such enriching content, please subscribe to Legacy IAS Academy. Have a great day.